We're not going to get to that today. I have not had a chance to review any amendments. So we're going to hold that bill. We're going to see how rapidly we can get through the other 5, and then we'll spend the last time finishing up, walking through 414. We will not take amendments or be voting today, but we will be taking amendments and voting next week, probably on Wednesday. And we will go through all amendments and the bill and then move it on to budget and tax if it has a majority of votes. So Wednesday could be ready to, you don't need pajamas, but we're going to see it all the way through. Let me also mention, and I appreciate Senator Gallion, on the issue about bus insurance coverage for contractors in Harford County. Ms. Goodman has put together a letter, and we have sent it off to the Insurance Administration. Yes, I think the Insurance Administration, about seeing if they could come up with some insurance coverage for that second $1 million that was cut from the existing insurance pool availability. So if they can shake it loose, we can not worry about the bill. So we're just waiting on that as well. So, but that's already in play. We sent it 3 or 4 days ago. As soon as we get an answer on that, we will move forward. With that, let's start rocking and rolling. We'll come back. There's one bill from the Health Subcommittee they completed. Senator Kagan will be here in a minute. She's the chair of that, so I'll hold that. But we also, like I said, have Senate Bill 84, I think it is. Is that right, Senator Lamb? Oh, no, it's not your bill. Senate Bill 84. We'll come back to that. So let's start with Senate Bill 22.
Senate Bill 22, On-Site Sewage Disposal Systems Inspection Licensing, from Senator Young. On-site sewage disposal systems, commonly referred to as septic systems, and instead requires that by July 1st, 2022, any person, unless exempted, who engages in the business of inspecting a septic system must obtain an on-site wastewater property transfer inspection license issued by the Department of the Environment. By January 1st, 2022, the department must adopt regulations that establish license eligibility criteria, minimum training standards, license terms, and fees for license applications and renewals as specified. The bill also establishes an administrative penalty for violators. Administrative penalties are deposited into the septic account within the Bay Restoration Fund. There is an amendment on page 2 of the voting packet. This is amendment number 863626/1 from Senator Hester. The amendment alters the bill's penalty provisions to make each septic system that an individual inspects without a license a separate offense, rather than making each day a person inspects a license or inspects without a license a separate offense.
Okay. This bill was passed out of the Senate last year, which again doesn't mean people can't change their mind or look at it more deeply and not pass it this year. There wasn't a lot of opposition, as I recall. Actually, there was no opposition. There was some favorable with amendments. So let me entertain a motion on Senate Bill 22, Senator Young. Is there a motion? It's been moved. Is there a second? Senator Hester moves the bill as the second. I know there was at least one amendment. I assume you'd like to move that, Senator Hester? Okay, is there a second for the Hester amendment? For purpose of discussion, I'll second it. It's
so on the amendment is on page 2 of the voting packet.
And, we explain the implications. I assume this will lower the fine by making it per.
So what the bill currently says is that each day that an individual inspects on-site sewage disposal system without a valid on-site wastewater property transfer inspection license constitutes a separate violation. This so that means if, for example, they inspected one system, but it took them 3 days to do it, that each of those days would be a different, would add up the penalty. license would be a separate violation. So if it took them 3 days to inspect, you're still only getting one violation because it's just one system.
And, Senator?
So I understand the multi-day inspection would lower it, but what if you inspected 3 different properties one day? Wouldn't that triple the cost? I
It's
mean,
by the systems, it's not by the days.
right. And-
Sure.
And do we know what, I think I heard you say, we don't know what the fees will be. Do we know what the fines will be? Apologize, trying to pull it up right now.
I think it's, yeah, so it's an administrative penalty not exceeding $10,000, so it would be up to the department to set it, but yes, up to 10,000.
So if it's a maximum 10 per thing, is your, if I could ask the amendment, is your intention to limit the amount they can get fined, or are you trying to expand the amount that they can get fined?
Senator Simon Ayer, this amendment was proposed by the advocates, and I believe their intention was to limit the amount that somebody could be fined.
To clarify, which advocates, but do we know if Senator Young supports this? Not that it matters, it's our bill, but I don't know which advocates.
So it was a clean water action and, oh God, I can't remember, and Drew Schmidt, who's a lobbyist for somebody.
According to the email I received from Drew Schmidt Perkins, who is representing Back River Precast, the amendment was offered in testimony by the environmental health officers and is supported by various inspection groups. So the Maryland On-Site Association of On-Site Wastewater Professionals and the Clean Water Action.
So can I suggest that we limit it to 10,000, say they have 3, or let me ask clarification. If they had 3, could they charge up to 30,000 fines with this amendment?
Yes.
I would like, I mean, I think it's going at what you're saying, but it also opens it up as well.
Right, but if I could just interject for a minute, it could be a $100 fine. It could be a $50 fine. I mean, this is a moving target. In other words, if you don't know how much each violation is, we don't know how significant it is to shift from days to disposal systems. Now, that's one concern I have. When you talk about multiple systems, I guess I'm thinking residential. Do residential have more multiple systems? Usually,
I'm not an expert on this,
yeah.
but I don't know that it takes a whole day to inspect one unit, and they could be doing multiple inspections in one day.
Right, but different it's on the inspector, not on the homeowner. Got it. Senator Gallion, do you have anything you're probably more knowledgeable about this stuff than we are.
I was just going back through kind of the, MACO had support with the amendments. I'm trying to read through here to see exactly what they wanted. I don't know if that was addressed in the same thing that Senator Hester put in, or it's probably separate. I was still kind of reading through that.
Are going to hold it, take it up on Wednesday when we are clear on it. I don't want to take a lot of time rooting around if we don't know. Your amendment's still on the table. It's been moved and seconded.
So just to be clear, though, the question that I just want to clarify, the information that we need is how long it takes to do one of these inspections?
Was one of the questions. I think we wanted to find out which of the advocates were pushing this. Senator Gallion was saying MACO had an amendment. He didn't know if it was the same one or not.
Okay, so those two questions. I'll work with Simon Ayer.
Senator?
If you could find out if their intention is, if they inspect 3 on the same day, would they want a maximum of 30,000 fine, or are they trying to just make a maximum of 10,000 per, the maximum in a day would only be 10,000?
Okay.
And again, this is just, I just don't want to spend a lot of time today because it's Friday.
Of course.
We'll put it on the list on Wednesday.
And I'll come back with answers.
Moving on to 121.
Senate Bill 121, Senators Patterson and Benson, zoning, environmental justice considerations. This bill requires a local governing body to require the preparation of an environmental justice analysis as specified upon an initial application for a special exception to construct or operate a landfill in an area zoned for residential use, or upon an application to extend or renew such a special exception. The environmental justice analysis is to be prepared at the expense of the property owner. The bill also requires the Commission on Environmental Justice and Sustainable Communities to issue a report by December 1st, 2021, making recommendations regarding strategies for increasing state oversight of and involvement in local zoning decisions that present environmental justice concerns. There are 2 amendments in your packet, and then a third one being offered by Senator Pinsky that that somebody can help me distribute. Okay, so the first one, which is in your voting packet on page 3, is amendment number 393720/1 from Senator Patterson. This alters the language in the bill concerning the study undertaken by the Commission on Environmental Justice to say that the study should focus on supporting local governments and communities in addressing environmental justice concerns, rather than on increasing state oversight of and involvement in local zoning decisions that present environmental justice concerns. The next amendment on page 5 of the voting packet from Senator Washington would apply the bill's provisions to crematories in addition to landfills.
Separate bill. So I I don't know the process for withdrawing that, but.
If you don't want to move
Yeah, I don't want to move it. Thank you. Thank you.
And then it might roll right around and address your concern as well.
Yep. So the amendment that just came around from Senator Pinsky, this amendment would apply the bill not just to landfills, but to facilities for which certain environmental permits are required. So specifically, any facility for which an air quality permit to construct or permit to operate issued under certain provisions of the Environment Article, a refuse disposal permit, which would cover the landfills, or a controlled hazardous substance facility permit. The amendment would also say that, would remove the language specifying the contents of the environmental justice analysis and instead authorize, but not require, a local zoning authority to require the preparation of a health.
I'm sorry, Senator Pinsky needs the amendment. Would authorize but not require a local zoning authority to require the preparation of a health and environmental analysis for permitted facilities. It also adds language specifically authorizing the zoning authority to deny an application or place conditions on the approval of an application that raises environmental or health concerns. In terms of the study by the Commission on Environmental Justice, the amendment includes the language from Senator Patterson's amendment on supporting rather than providing oversight of local zoning decisions, and also adds language requiring the Commission to make specific recommendations regarding options and strategies, including the identification of model ordinances, for incorporating environmental justice concerns into local land use and zoning decisions.
Senator Patterson, before I call on you, let me offer an apology. They overlap some, but not totally, but I've been juggling a lot and I haven't had a chance to sit down and talk with you. So if you want to take till Wednesday, not to slow this down, but I don't want to rush anything. On one hand, just so we understand, it broadens it beyond landfills. It's you see the new definition, because I felt it was just, we start adding a laundry list of 5 or 10 industries. But then on my page 2, it starts to get a little firmer and tougher on what needs to be done. So, Senator, I'm going to shift it to you, and I don't want to rush anything. We can make it one of the first few on Wednesday, or we can discuss it now, as long as we don't spend a super lot of time, because we have to do some other things. But it's your call.
Well, I think I would like to read the amendment entirely and perhaps run about 2 or 3 persons who have a special interest in this project. So if we can move it out no later than Wednesday, it's getting late. But if I could just have 2 minutes now or 1 minute to provide some additional information, or would you rather I do it on Wednesday? Half a minute?
I'm afraid to raise it now. We'll get lost over the weekend.
Okay.
I mean, if you really feel you want to get it out now, please. If not, I'll make this the second bill after the other bill we held with the Hester amendment. So,
Oh, we sort of
it's
rushed
your
today.
call.
I was holding it until Wednesday then, when
Okay.
we vote on it.
Okay.
I'll speak to it at that point.
Okay. And again,
Thank
my
you.
apologies.
All right.
Just Senator Carrozza.
Chair, I know that we'll wait till Wednesday, but at that point, can we then get an update? Like, I was first trying to understand what the original bill did, and then all these other amendments, and it sounds like your amendment may be broadening it. So we'll get a complete walkthrough again, because I'm trying to look at the testimony where it says some favor, but with amendments, and then I'm trying to figure out if the amendments that Senator Patterson and you are offering are addressing those issues. So I think that would be helpful for Wednesday, if we could do a little bit of a walkthrough before we go right into an amendment. Thank you.
That's fine, but we will take up the amendments and move on the bill after we've done that. But let me just, at least, again, not to get into content, my amendment, by and large, weakened some of the requirements in the original bill, but it does use a broader definition. So in other words, there are a lot of mays recommending the local jurisdictions do things. It keeps the state out of zoning. So I think it changes the bill, and some of the things that people find onerous will be removed, you'll see, but the definition is broadened. Again, we'll talk more on Wednesday, but I just wanted to give you the context. And the uncodified section in Senator Patterson's and mine are exactly the same, so we don't disagree on that.
Not exactly. You added another provision in there.
In the uncodified?
Yes.
Okay, I misspoke. We'll wait till Wednesday, we'll walk through it. Next bill. 284, we're holding 245 also till Wednesday. So there are 3 bills already on the list. The Ellis bill, the Patterson bill, and the Young bill. 284.
Senate Bill 284, Maryland Veterans Service Animal Program definitions. This bill is sponsored by Senator Simon Nair. This bill provides definitions for the terms service dog, support dog, and therapy horse within the Maryland Veterans Service Animal Program provisions. Under current law, the terms are referenced but are not defined. There is a sponsor amendment. There was no opposition at the hearing. There is a sponsor amendment that alters the definition of support dog and also alters the definition of therapy horse. So the amended definition of support dog is within your voting packet, and it specifies that a support dog is a dog that is individually trained, so emphasis on individually trained, to provide the support of the benefits that are provided under the current definition. So under the current definition, it has to be affirmed by a medical professional within the medical professional's scope of practice, but left out of that is individually trained. The amended definition of therapy horse remains the same as on page 3 of your bill, with the exception of the certification requirement. So this amendment will specify that a therapy horse be certified by a certified horse discovery center by the Maryland Horse Industry Board, and every other certification that it has will remain the same.
Let's first put the bill in front of us. It's been moved, it's been seconded. Senator Simonaire, you want to move your amendment?
Yes, please. And if I can just make a quick statement? Okay.
It's been moved and seconded, now make your statement.
Yeah, so we worked with the department on this amendment. This bill passed last year. The Horse Council came back and wanted some additional put in. So we took some of their suggestions with the Discovery Center because it had more liability and so forth. They wanted more. They wanted to open up to more horses. And the department's review is we have limited resources. We want to get the most qualified stables. And if we get more money, we can expand it later. But this is what the department wants.
Discussion on the amendment. Anybody object to the amendment? If not, it is adopted. The bill as amended. Further discussion. Discussion. Okay, if not, if no one will be voting against the bill, we will list it as unanimous and sent to the floor. I must say, Senator, someone approached me of saying that whether we should limit bills that mention veterans and animals, that you might be one might be limited to 5 of those. When you mention veterans and animals, they seem to pass fairly quickly and easily. So anyway, we thank you for that work. Next bill.
Senate Bill 338, also sponsored by Senator Simonaire. The title of this bill is Local Government Animal Control Facilities Adoption Fee Waiver for Veterans, Pets for Vets Act of 2021. This bill requires an animal control facility that is operated by a county or municipality to waive a fee for a veteran adopting a dog or cat, so long as they present valid identification that indicates their veteran status. The bill permits the animal control facility to limit the waivers allowed to 1 dog and 1 cat within a 6-month period. This bill applies to all counties and municipalities, and there was no opposition at the hearing, and there are no amendments.
Motion on the bill. It's been moved and seconded. I'm sorry, no amendments? Okay, discussion on the bill. Discussion saying none. Anybody objecting to it, we will move the bill, and it will be recorded as unanimous. That's 338. Okay, 404.
Senate Bill 404, State Government Websites Required Information. This is sponsored by Senator Augustine. This bill requires each principal department within the executive branch to publish the name and title of the secretary and deputy secretary of that department prominently on the website, along with photographs of the individuals. There was no opposition, and there are no amendments.
To recall the hearing on this, and so basically this puts in law the requirement of deputy secretary photographs for each of these departments and agencies? I mean, I know we have oversight, but this seems like an overreach of oversight for the
The chair
legislative
would
branch.
welcome a motion of any type. Is there a second? There's a second. Discussion. Okay. Right. Well, yeah. Will anybody be voting? Would anybody like to vote in favor of this bill? Okay. Received unanimous unfavorable. Okay. We're going to go to the Health Subcommittee Chair, Madam Vice Chair. Well, this is Senate Bill 84.
It's not in the packet.
Send out a supplemental voting list with this on it.
It is not in this packet.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this was one of the bills sent to Health Subcommittee.
Let me,
It was meant to be on the voting list. We can do one of two things. You can hear it, and if you are fine with it and the amendments and the recommendation, we can move it, or if you're not comfortable, we can hold it till Wednesday. Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So there were 3 bills that were sent to the Health Subcommittee. We spent a chunk of time on each of them. There was one that we moved forward. After moving it forward, the Attorney General weighed in with a suggestion, which is probably why it's not in the packet, because there was a conversation we were going to have with the full committee. But at this point, if it's okay with legal counsel, I think it's probably better to give an interlineated version with the subcommittee's amendments and have the Attorney General's suggestions that the subcommittee can look at our next meeting, so we can bring to you as a fully baked product.
Done. Okay, this will be also on Wednesday's list with the other 3 bills.
And we have just determined Monday, 2 p.m. The Health Occupations Subcommittee will meet again. We will pick up and finalize our work on the other 2 of the 3 bills, and hopefully that will complete our efforts. And I really want to thank this side of the room for their cooperation and scheduling flexibility, as well as our legal counsel, Ms. Foxworth. So,
Okay, and
thank
while
you.
we're making announcements, Senator Fry. I'm
Sorry?
1 hour for that to block?
1 hour.
Senator
Max.
Fry Hester, who I've asked to chair the ad hoc group on cybersecurity and the affected legislation. Do you want to announce any time?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The ad hoc group on cybersecurity will meet on Tuesday at 4 o'clock, and I would block off 90 minutes.
Well, if we're not, it just gets pushed back. I don't know. Look, we have to be a little nimble here, that's all. We have, I think, like 12 bills approximately on Tuesday and Wednesday, and we have session both days. So your guess is as good as mine, how long it'll take us. Okay, now we are going to continue from where we left off on the climate bill. I think we left off at page 24, 25.
Chair, I'll be right back.
Sure.
I'm not abandoning you.
That's okay. We are going to get through the last 20 pages in the next, 45 minutes or hour. Okay. We first dealt with new construction, and then it deals with language on renovations. And on page 26 at the top, it defines what a major renovation is. We're talking a major renovation. It's got to be 50% of the assessed value of the existing building or a change of use. It excludes public purpose projects, historic properties, and a number of other things. And it sets conditions for what the energy reduction should be also on page 26. And it calls on the department to adopt regulations to implement that section. Oh, we did this. 27 calls for this life cycle model. This is the where models developed for either residential homes, apartment buildings, whatever, for I think new construction, what the cost would be, what the cost savings would be, whether heat pumps are used, whether natural gas is used, whatever type of energy, so people have an opportunity to compare future energy costs. Okay, there's nothing on page 28. Yes.
Microphone, hold on.
Okay.
Thank you. We have the definition of major renovation, and then we have the 40%, that's the new number, the 40% reduction.
Yes.
What is it? Was there a number before? So this is a new 40% reduction for buildings that fit this major renovation description?
We're 25,000 square feet. I think there have been like 3 of those built in the last 5 years in Baltimore. I mean, we're talking fairly large operations. And any renovation will be in the tens of millions of dollars.
And then just the 40%, was that based on that number? What was that based on?
A couple of things. One, talking with architects who were in the business of building buildings and designing buildings. Also, the experience in New York City with the Empire State Building, and our need to have more energy efficiency. You know. And we're on 29. April, could you, this is this the Hedelman language? Top of 29. I'm going to give this to Ms. Morton, who knows it, can explain it better.
So page 29, generally what this has to do is is the existing high-performance building standards. So the bill in general amends the high-performance building standards, which apply to all state buildings. First of all, it applies them, if you look at the bottom of page 29, to capital projects for which at least 25% of the project costs are funded with state funds. Currently, it only applies to capital projects that are solely funded with state funds. It also says that in addition to the current law requirement, which is that the building achieve at least LEED silver status, it says that the building must also meet the LEED Zero Energy program requirements. So it has to be net zero energy usage. But the additional language on page 29, this new underlined section B, comes from Senator Hedelman's bill that we heard earlier this session that says she identified an issue right now where saying, particularly for school buildings, and she also said public safety buildings, particularly in rural areas, requiring that they meet LEED silver certification levels is more difficult for them just because of where they're located, because the LEED system essentially requires you to, there's different ways you can get points to get up to the LEED silver status. You get points just for being located in an area with good public transit, and you get points for being located in an area that is densely developed. So a school in a rural area is generally not eligible for those points. So this modifies the existing requirement that current law says high performance building has to be LEED silver. This language being pulled in from her bill says that unless it's if it's a school or public safety building, then it can achieve the LEED certified, which is a status that's one step down from LEED silver. If, based on the building's location, it achieves 5 points or less in the combined credits for access to quality transit and surrounding density and diverse uses, which are those are the kind of credit terminology from the LEED program. Yeah, so 30 and 30, top of 31, this is another thing from the Hedelman bill. It's actually in both bills, so it's not being added through amendment, which is just to specify that right now, school buildings are technically not required to get the LEED certification. They just have to meet the same levels of, they have to do the same things, but they don't actually have to get that certification. This bill would say that they actually do need to get the certification. There have been issues and questions around whether just requiring schools to sort of certify, or not even certify, to say that they're meeting the standards is really good enough without that third-party certification.
Rosa?
So And then I guess this is where I was trying to understand this zero energy new construction. That's what we're talking about here, is that correct? Okay, so the, in the letter from the Association for Commercial Real Estate, they're saying that focusing on eliminating energy use will provide fewer emission reductions at higher cost as utilities transition to low-carbon electric generation. I'm taking that they're saying that it would be difficult to reach that balance.
I can only say that from everything I've read, energy efficiency is the number one or number two ways to reduce carbon emissions. The less carbon emitting things you need to heat your building, the better it is for the environment. So in other words, we can put solar to help shift, but if your building needs, like in your own house, if you can cut your cost for heating your house by 20 or 30 or 40%, whether it's commercial, whether it's residential, that is, if not the first, one of the top 2 or 3 ways to deal with a climate crisis. I don't know how else to phrase it.
But are they, and again, I'm just trying to understand, their point would be that they have other options under the current Greenhouse Reductions Act, and we're limiting some of those options?
We are setting building codes. Unless I'm missing something.
I would add is so there are 2 pieces of this bill that have to do with energy use in buildings. So this piece is dealing specifically with state buildings and state-funded projects. So this is the piece that says they have to be LEED Zero Energy certified. Now there's a number of ways you can get that zero energy. You can either you can make reductions to the energy use, so increase energy efficiency. You could do things like installing renewable energy systems on site, like solar panels or geothermal or whatever. But LEED Zero also allows you to meet that requirement by purchasing clean energy. Right. So if you are purchasing solar energy from the utility, that counts for LEED Zero certification. So there's that piece. There's another part of the bill that I think is probably more what the commercial buildings groups are concerned, or their letter is addressing, which was the piece that we went over yesterday that requires the Department of Labor to essentially phase in these kind of more stringent energy code requirements for large commercial buildings that eventually, by, I'm not going to remember which year off the top of my head, by 2033 would require new commercials built after 2033 to achieve a net zero energy balance. And again, that energy balance, it has to do both with, you can meet that, you can reach that net zero energy balance in a number of ways, either both by increasing energy efficiency, but also by, purchasing clean, green energy.
Oh, I'm sorry. Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I think this is a really important part of this bill, and I totally support it. And more new buildings are being built as LEED certified buildings. The question that I have is using the guidelines for the U.S. Green Building Council, which is great, but who actually does the inspection? Is there any mandated consultant or something, or do we just say, this is going to be LEED silver, this is going to be LEED gold?
When you say that it has to achieve that LEED silver, you have to get it inspected by, there are certain groups and individuals who are authorized to certify a building as meeting the LEED requirements. So that's part of the requiring. the
But I think it's done
certification.
earlier. I think it's done when the architecture, when the plans are put in
That's what I
place. It's not afterwards they say, oops, you missed. I think
Okay.
it's done early in the process.
And we don't need to say that, we just know that by the end, they understand that if they're going to be inspected and given LEED certification, that they better start early so there's no oops at the end.
They
And we
build
don't,
with specs.
we don't need to say that? Okay, thank you.
So on page 31, where it talks about ensure that state buildings, public schools, and community college are required to meet the high-performance building requirements, so who pays for the public schools and community colleges to meet those building requirements? Is that then on the local jurisdictions?
Law is that all capital, if solely funded capital projects, all community colleges, and all local public schools have to meet the state's high-performance building requirements, which is currently LEED Silver. There is a provision in the current law right now that says public schools don't actually have to get the LEED certification, they just have to meet those same standards, but that's the current law. What this does, though, is it makes the standards more stringent, and it says that in addition to being LEED Silver, you also have to be LEED Net Zero or LEED Zero Energy. So it doesn't alter who's paying the cost for that. It's the same as general funding, the way that schools and community colleges are funded now. But it is making the standards more stringent,
It's a higher standard that's more expensive.
potentially. But
And that cost
again,
would
there
then
might be
I just
offsets
want,
in
I just
cost.
want the facts, though. It is a higher standard that is higher cost, which I understand the chairman's point means you'll save money in the long run, but the initial higher cost would be borne by the local jurisdictions and the community colleges.
So for the community college piece, yes. For the school piece, and that was something that we covered yesterday, is the bill does create a net zero school loan fund and says that, first of all, schools only have to designate one school per jurisdiction to meet those net zero, the new higher net zero requirements. And they only have to do it subject to the availability of funding in this fund which would provide a zero interest loan specifically to cover that cost difference between meeting the current lower LEED Silver requirements and the new LEED Silver plus net zero requirements.
So thank you. I understand that response, and I just think it's important as we talk through this is that if we put the facts out that the higher requirements could be higher costs than the reality of what the time frame realistically may look like. I mean, if
We can debate the content center. I'd rather wait till Wednesday. But the point is, prior to this bill in this year, the state passed laws that said they had to meet silver or the silver equivalent. So that put certain requirements on them then. So every time we pass laws, those issues come up. So this is not unique.
But this is a higher standard.
Well, no, it does two things. One, in the past it said it was LEED certified, or it could be certified following the equivalent standards of LEED, of silver LEED. This is saying it's got to be silver, is that right, April? It can't be the equivalent standard. It's got to be silver with the additions. So we've increased the standards over the last 15 or 20 years for all public buildings. So this is not a new concept in terms of whether you want to call it mandates to the locals or not. The state has consistently pushed them to have more efficient buildings. And you can debate whether it's right or wrong, but that's what this does.
I understand that point, but I think this just takes it to a higher standard that could be more expensive.
It potentially could be.
And that's just, I'm just trying to clarify that.
Right. Okay, we're going to go to page 32. This is This is the zero emission vehicles. Essentially what this says, oh, I'm sorry. I apologize.
School loan fund is an existing program? Okay. I mean, to Senator Kagan's point last week, I think it's very similar to the clean energy, the energy efficiency loan fund that already exists.
Clean energy, the CPACE program, it's only commercial properties. I'm not certain whether schools qualify, for that funding. I'm not sure. But that loan program, it's privately financed, so it's not state funding. And you have to meet whatever their general requirements are to receive loans. So saying that schools would have to get it from there,
Okay.
I mean, it creates potential difficulties for schools.
Okay. I'm just trying to avoid duplication if possible.
Agreed. And Gallion raised some questions the other day about the loan fund. Is it, and maybe zero loan is not the right answer, and we'll be happy to look at amendments on Wednesday on that. This essentially requires the state fleet. They're the cars that are assigned to each agency. I hear there are between 3,000 and 4,000 of them, to, as they hit their life cycle, to be replaced with all electric vehicles. It says in the first few years, 50% of the cars that turn over and are replaced have to be electric. And starting in 2025, all of them must be electric. So by 2030, the whole fleet will be electric. So the state will be leading by example in terms of their light-duty vehicles, which are cars. Question?
So again, I love this idea. I'm going to get into the weeds because when we get asked about it, are there going to be enough charging stations at the departments and elsewhere this soon so that we can make sure that these vehicles are going to be able to stay on the roads?
Well, I can only tell you for the last 3 years, they've been using the VW settlement money to put in charging stations. And I think currently the infrastructure is probably ahead of the number of vehicles.
Right.
But if we need to make that clearer, we can have an amendment on Wednesday.
Okay.
I don't think it hurts the bill. I mean, it just confirms that at the state agencies, they have electric stations.
Doesn't hurt.
Nope. And then it asks for a report on how they're doing. Then going over to 33 is the Net Zero School Loan Fund. It explains the purposes. It explains it's no interest. And then it has to be repaid. I'm not sure if it says if there's a repayment schedule. But again, this wasn't perfect when it was written, Senator Gallion, and if the school to put solar on the roof has to put out 2 or 3 more million and they get it back within 6 or 7, maybe we shouldn't have the fund. I mean, that's the committee's call. So that's on page 33 and 34. Moving on to 35. In the middle of the page, it has the Healthy Soils Program. We've put money aside up to $500,000 for the Healthy Soils Program, which also helps in capture greenhouse gases. Yeah.
Is that a current program?
Yeah, but I don't know how much funding they have. You got the answer.
And what department manages it?
Ag.
Ag? Thank you.
Yep. The rest of 35 lists how the money will be spent, which I'm going to explain where it comes from in just a moment. And 35 and 36 says essentially the money from what's called the SEIF fund, the Strategic Energy Investment Fund, which is titled on 34, is the money that comes from regional greenhouse gas initiatives. That's the 10, 12, 14 northeastern states that have a cap and trade program and essentially tax smokestacks. And each state has to buy credits, or each company has to buy credits, and that money goes into this fund. We actually benefit from it. And what I've proposed here, because the money goes to MEA, Maryland Energy Administration, they've been using between $45 and $50 million. What I say here, as to not to rob them, even though I'm not happy with the job they're doing, is to say the first $20 million that comes in over the $50 million will go to the Climate Solutions Now Act special fund to fund all these projects. It caps it at $20 million. Senator.
Ian, I'm just trying to, I know we discussed this some last year. How'd you come up with that number? Why not a higher number? I just worry about if we have the number too low, that some of the existing programs could be come up short. And also, I've heard that more states are joining in on that, and potentially, there could be less money, not as much money as we thought a year ago, coming into this fund that will go over and above.
Again, I was only using the last few years of what they've used and budgeted. I don't think there's been an audit on them to whether they're using it well. So I didn't want to rob money they've been receiving. So I'm basically flat funding them and taking the next 20 for the project proposed in this bill. Money over, if more than 70 million comes in, they get, if a whole lot of money comes in, let's say 80 million comes in, they'll get another $10 million. Unless someone else wants money from the same fund. Okay, next are buses, and the administration has already committed at least half the buses going electric. What you see on the bottom of 36 and 37 and 38 is the exact same language as Senator Zucker's bill and Delegate Corman. We are running parallel tracks on the same wheels. And it says that the buses, as they turn over the next 9 years, also should go to electric. I do suggest that money to pay for that come from the Transportation Trust Fund. Senator Riley?
Buses are we looking at in the fleet?
Ian, do you know? We'll look. We'll get back to that.
And then I've been doing a little research in this. We have a couple of bus companies here in this county, and most of the transit buses have about a 90-mile radius that are being used in Montgomery County, Philadelphia, and New York. And the mileage can vary by season. In the cold weather, the batteries have to help produce heat. In the warm weather, they have to help produce cooling. So I'm also interested in the normal range of these buses. What should we expect these vehicles to go on an average? For instance, if it's Kent Island to Baltimore, 40 miles, 90-mile radius, that's probably fine. But if we're going from Frederick to Baltimore, it may be a little bit more. And we may have to recharge them someplace in between. So just trying to get my handle around how many, radius, that type of thing.
We will get those to you, but we can answer some of them. First of all, the buses that we're going to contract with and bill or buy have to have at least 100-mile operating range, number one. Number two, it excludes local transit systems. These are state buses. Okay, and it also, I think we have some carve-outs, but I'm not sure. In terms of long routes, if we have to carve them out, I'm more than happy to, this was not to do something we can't do, or that the technology is not available for.
Mr. Chairman, once you get in the weeds, it's really interesting. They're coming. Montgomery County has 25 this year. Next year, they're going to put another 81 on the road, and the year after that, another 150. So this stuff is coming. There are 6 manufacturers of electric transit buses, so we might have some good competition. But the technology, especially the battery technology, is really the key. And if the date that this starts, you said was 2020? 2022? No, that's the report. Yeah. But that's the procurement. By the time the buses are manufactured and delivered, it might be another year and a half or 2 years. You know, that technology for the batteries can change dramatically in a few short years. So just want to look a little more detail. And the other issue is that as the good senator from Montgomery County said, from Rockville and Gaithersburg said, the charging stations. If we have a group of buses and you're only charging 2 or 4 at a time, it'd take a long time to replenish them. You may have to put aside significant infrastructure money to help create the bus barns so that you have like drop-down charging wires so you can do a number of buses at the same time. And up in Philadelphia, they actually had to, I think it's Philadelphia, bear with me, they actually had to build a electric substation outside a bus barn to be able to bring enough energy into the building. So we have to be sensitive that there may be other infrastructure investments that we have to be prepared for.
That same point, and I'll give it to Ms. Morton, the department has to start doing reports January 22, and part of their reports must be on the infrastructure. How much infrastructure is needed to create this bus fleet? It's not going to happen overnight. So if it's not done yet, by 22, we will have a full evaluation of their infrastructure.
Like with the light-duty vehicles, it's a gradual replacement as they wear out? Yeah. The information I had, which I just submit to the committee, is sometimes states use Federal Transit Administration money to help buy the buses, and they're required to have a certain minimum number of years of use. So we can't be swapping out so-called newer buses for electric buses. We have to make sure we handle the depreciation and useful life in an appropriate way. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And actually, on page 38, line 17, we say the administration has to present a transition plan for converting the buses. So we're not micromanaging and telling them exactly what to do.
It's just, so in answer to the question about the number of buses, MTA's bus fleet is comprised of about 775 total buses, and MTA has advised that it plans to sign a new contract for the purchase of 70 buses each year from fiscal 2023 through 2027 in order to replace many of the older buses in its fleet.
So that would do it in 10 years. If they are already committing to 70 a year and there's 700 plus. Thank you. Vice Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Morton, on page 36, line 27, can you please just describe which buses we're talking about that carry more than 10 passengers but is used to carry passengers for compensation? Is that compensation by the passengers? Because you said the transit buses are exempted. Is it charter buses used for like athletic teams? Is it? Can you just describe what that includes?
So this is MTA's buses, so it is transit buses. These are transit buses, but they're transit buses owned by the state. They're not the local. So if it's not local transit buses, it's anything owned and operated by MTA.
This does not include WMATA. Senator Gallion.
I brought this up briefly the other day, and the maximum speed of 55 miles per hour. So the way I read it, this could be a vehicle that holds even 12 people, correct? Would be anything over 10 passengers. So if they had like a van type vehicle that holds, say, a 12-person van, it could potentially only go a maximum of 55 miles an hour. Is this just because they're used in areas that they're not on the highways, on the major interstates much, or that number seems low to me
No,
when the speed limit's 65?
It says at least 55.
Right, so if they'll go 55 and the speed limit's 65, I just wondered where that 55 came from.
I don't know, actually. That's from Senator Zucker's bill that he had last year, so
Okay.
I will try to find that answer.
I guess that to get in the right lane just gets...
Well, look, I mean, most of these buses are not going to be going 80 miles an hour on the Beltway. I mean, these transit buses are taking people now. Some will be between the airport and other places.
But you
But
would even have a 12-person van that would only be required, so...
But my understanding is even all the new electric cars and buses will at least do 55. So, I mean, they might do 80 or 90 or 100. They're not going to do 140, but most cars won't either.
And on these electric buses, are the lifespan on those only like 10 years? And I guess the other thing that wasn't really, I don't see anything in here about alternate fuel buses. I just wondered, as far as the cost, if you could buy a few of those alternate fuel ones at the same price as it would be to buy one electric, I just have some questions about that. As far as, as the technology gets better with electric, and if an electric bus now is only going to last 10 years and you could buy several of the other types that are relatively low emission, why would we want to narrow it so tight to just electric? Why wouldn't we want to maybe broaden that a little bit to alternate fuel also?
I can only answer from the little I know, and that is all electric has no emissions.
But it takes emissions to make the electricity to charge them, if they're at a station to recharge.
Right, but I think the thought is as we move to clean power, clean
Right.
energy, they're going to be electrified using clean energy at the same time. And also the emissions themselves. Currently now, if you get a gas engine car, there are emissions when the oil is processed, turned into gas, and then you also have emissions out of the tailpipe of the car. Transportation, I think, is second or first or third. It is one of the top 2 or 3 contributors to greenhouse gas. So, it's a policy question, which we can take up.
Okay, thank you.
On page 39, this says that clean energy can be exempt from personal property tax, from county municipal corporate property tax, if it's installed on rooftops, broadways, or brownfields, and as part of community solar program. It's to add more incentives, business incentives, for the companies and businesses that either install it or actually build it. Going on to page 40. This goes into the tree. Yes.
Exemption, again, who would benefit from the exemption? The businesses that actually install, is that what I understand?
So this is for the community solar program specifically, And right now, community solar, it's sort of, there's like subscriber organizations that it's a, let me find something that I can read that
If I could,
explains
I need an
community
example.
solar.
I just want to understand who actually,
Right.
what
This
organization
is
that-
not somebody, an individual who just puts solar panels on their roof, whether it's a
Right.
business or an individual. It has to be part of one of these community solar projects. But let me find something that kind of encapsulates that and explains it better than I will off the top of my head.
And also, the other condition is it's used for a lower moderate income customers. So it is incentive for people to generate clean energy and sell it to low and moderate income people.
So it sounds like it's for the providers of the energy, that they would benefit from this personal property exemption if they install as part of the community solar energy, and if it's targeted to low or moderate income customers. So it would be the energy providers then that would?
Let me do some research.
Okay, let's go on to the trees section on page 40. Is Robin available? Yeah, she's there. Is she? Okay. Basically, what this section does, and Robin from Chesapeake Bay Foundation is more of an expert than I am, it sets a goal of planting 5 million trees across the state on public and private land. And as we discussed last week, the money is primarily for planting the trees, but it can also be used for maintaining the trees, as Senator Gallion has raised. Additionally, 10% of the trees have to be set aside for urban areas that have basically been denuded, or in those area communities, primarily urban areas, that don't have tree canopy cover. Robin, you want to jump in here if you can hear us?
Yes, absolutely. Can you hear me?
Yeah, briefly run through the conditions of the bill, of the tree section.
Sure. So at the top of page 40, you see an allowance that would enable the Department of Agriculture to offer an up to $1,000 one-time signing bonus per acre to farmers who are willing to voluntarily enroll parts of their property along the edges of the cropland into a forested buffer program, the CREP, the Conservation Reserve Enhancement Program. That's one aspect of the bill that we're trying to put forward to encourage Department of Agriculture to increase the number of tree plantings in those buffer areas. Other aspects of the program would include providing additional funding to the Department of Natural Resources. You see at the top of page 41, line 5, that language that describes how the Department of Natural Resources would be allowed to use the funding for existing programs such as the Mountain Woodland Incentive Fund and other forestry initiatives. And then the third leg of the program is creation of an urban tree program in partnership with the Chesapeake Bay Trust. The Chesapeake Bay Trust would provide grants to neighborhood or community organizations that are interested in planting trees in underserved urban areas. I'm happy to walk through, the language as it's here page by page, or discuss any aspects.
Just by segments of let's not do line by line, we don't want to read it. The components, there are two questions. Hold on, Vice Chair and then Senator Gallion.
Hey, Robin, I can't see you, but I hear your voice, and thank you for being with us on a Friday evening. Page 40, the section at the top, A, lines 2 through 6, a one-time signing bonus of up to $1,000 per acre of land enrolled. Let me just be cynical or something for a second. I take $1,000, I take $5,000, and then oops, I decide to plant something in that space, so I chop down all the trees. I've gotten my 5K. I'm now using the 5 acres for something else. Is there anything in this language that prevent me from doing that? And should there be?
Sure. Absolutely, there is. That would not be allowed. So, to maximize participation in the Conservation Reserve Enhancement Program. This is a federal program run by the U.S. National Resources Conservation Service. And under that program, there are guidelines that require a 10 to 15-year easement. You choose whether it's going to be 10 or 15 years. And the wonderful thing about this is the reason why the state can just provide this sort of icing on the cake signing bonus is because the federal government is fronting the payment of the cake itself. They're providing the rent payment to the farmer through this program, but in order to qualify for the program, the farmer has got to sign that contract to keep the land forested for either 10 or 15 years.
And just to follow up, is there a different financial incentive for me if I pledge 10 years versus 15 years?
No, not here, not in the signing bonus. Now, you'll note, though, there's a lot of discretion for Department of Agriculture. If they wanted to provide a $750 signing bonus for folks who were signing up for a 10-year easement, they could. Right now, they provide up to $250 signing bonus. So this is just giving them a little more leverage if they think it would encourage more farmers to sign up. We think, based on surveys that we've done, primarily on the Eastern Shore, that this would help encourage participation in the program. Right now, the state is leaving federal dollars on the table. We are under-enrolled in this Conservation Reserve Enhancement Program. We could enroll as many as 100,000 acres in this program, and we're now dipping below 50,000. For every dollar we invest in this program, the feds are putting in almost $5. This is where we can make a lot of mileage up on trees for carbon capture and trees for water quality, of course, because they're filtering those pollutants off of the farmland.
Senator Gallion.
That's really helpful. Thank you, Robin.
Senator Gallion.
Thank you. I'm just kind of trying to line up everything as far as the different, there's so many different programs, different funds. I think that's the most confusing part about all this, is to figure out where the money's coming from, who's administering different programs. So my understanding is DNR and MDE each have some tree planting programs that take money from different funds. And I had a meeting with some of them earlier today on Zoom to kind of get a breakdown of what's where. And now we also now have Department of Agriculture coming into the mix through, you mentioned with the CREP program and this. I guess my question, with the different programs that are already out there, the 5 million tree number, is that in addition to the other programs, or is that everything all including the other programs that are already in effect?
Robin, let me try first, and if I'm wrong, jump in.
Sure.
The bill says 5 million new trees. You can't double count. That's not the purpose here. The prospective trees from any of these funds will count. Now, some of these accounts, ag or DNR, have some accounts and some money to help pay for this, and some federal money, which, as we heard, is left on the table. We call for 15 million additional dollars from the Bay Restoration Fund to help pay for a bulk of or some portion of these trees. And there's also language that says any other public or private money that can be leveraged to spend and invest in these trees on public or private land.
Okay. So that money from the Bay Restoration Fund, the money that the funds from that fund now are being used for stuff like, my understanding, like, is that like septic, and can you tell us what all is already being used from the money from that fund?
Well, I can't tell you all, but it originally started with the flush tax, And most of the money originally went to water treatment plants, either new ones or upgrading. And they took care of the large and medium, there's a different terminology, major, and now they're doing the last few minor. And other people can apply for the grants for sewer, for septic, and we've, over the years, broadened the definition because we took care. The most effective are the water treatment plants, sewage treatment plants. They're the ones that clean up the bay more than anything. You get the best return on your investment. We've done a lot of that over the years. We've increased what can be added on the list of spending money on. So, because having trees near buffer streams and rivers filter water, they're major components to cleaning up the bay as well. So that's what we do. We're getting basically two for the price of one. We're cleaning up the air, we're cleaning up the bay and the rivers and the streams. So for this part of the bill, we're directing money from the Bay Restoration Fund.
Right. I'm just curious, and I can get some answers on this, how, as far as that fund goes, with what they're already spending money on, if you add on an additional $15 million, is that going to put them in the red, so to speak? That's my question. And I don't want to see other programs potentially get cut back. So it's a fine line there. I'm not necessarily opposed, but I just want to make sure that we're not trying to stretch that fund beyond its means. So
our understanding is there are $50 or $60 million above the grants that they have been approving. Now, don't quote me exactly on that, but it's something like that. And you need to understand, we heard another bill from Chairman Gazzone from the Chesapeake Bay Commission, also directing $20 million from that fund be used on the bay cleanup. So we're not the only ones in that line.
The only other thing that I would add is that there are two different accounts in the Bay Restoration Fund. There's the wastewater account and there's the septics account. This bill and the other bill, that Clean Water Commerce Act bill that the chairman was referencing from Senator Gazzone, deal with the wastewater account. The septics account is separate. It's not touched by either of these bills.
Okay, Senator Ellis, followed by Senator Freyhester.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm sitting here hearing about 5 million trees and carbon capture. It sounds good. And it took me back to a preacher I had years ago who moved to Tacoma Park from the Midwest. And he lasted 1 year, one spring season, because the pollen was so terrible. Really, serious health effects. And folks with asthma, it really adds on. So my question is, when we talk about native plants, I don't know if anyone knows this, does Maryland have any native trees that are not super shedders of pollen? At the same time, we have the oaks that we could maybe specify, that as far as, a balance in trees that we plant, because we really have to really think about that, because a lot of people suffer tremendously during the heavy pollen season in the spring.
Robin, if you could you reach out to Senator Ellis and continue this conversation over the next few days to see if there are trees that are optimal or locally grown or that are less pollen? I don't have the answers to that, but if you would.
Absolutely. As you know, red maple, oak, and American sycamore are the most popular trees chosen by neighborhoods when they do urban tree plantings. And I can get more information on the variety that are possible.
And the pollen production, not all trees shed pollen at the same time. But if we have like a lot of the, the pines, they come later in the year, later than the oaks. So if we can look at that for us, and maybe we can look at the potential ill consequences of planting the same trees that maybe will add to that health situation. And a lot of folks who suffer from, asthma and other allergies to pollen. Okay, sure, thanks.
Thank you. Am I on? I just wanted to say that, I really, first of all, I support this bill 100%. I've been confused, and I've had a couple conversations with Robin and with the chair about the money, and I think it'd be super helpful if we could have just a better understanding of how the money is flowing. And I'd be happy to jump on the phone with the right person at MDE and whoever wants to join me on Monday.
Okay. Thank you, Senator. I was trying to do too many things at once. There's just one other section that's worth noting. That's on page 51. And this, I think, is very important. In subsection 9, uncodified, it says that section 2, which deals with...
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. It was my fault, and I was distracting the chairman. Could you say what you said again, Senator Hester? Because I know I didn't get to hear it.
So I was just saying that I've been trying to understand the funding flows, and I had a really detailed conversation with Ian and the chair yesterday, and I'm still kind of confused. And so I was offering to call the right person at MDE again, maybe with Robin on the phone, and anybody else who wanted to join me sometime on Monday. So I'm just throwing it out there.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Okay, the last item, section 9 on page 51, it says that section 2 shall sunset in 2025 if it's not renewed and passed again. Section 2 is the 60% reduction marker and the 2045 net zero reduction. No, is it both or just one? Section 9 in terms of aggregation, if it's not, if the sunset provision. Section, what is section 2? What is that called?
Section 2 is that's the goal setting, so that,
Is it both the 60% and the 2045?
yes.
Okay, so essentially, when this will have to be renewed or revisited by the legislature in 2025 to see, and if the legislature believes these numbers are right, they will have to pass new legislation, or of course they can amend them up or they can amend them down. So we are not locked into this for the next 10 years. There is a fail-safe that those goals come back to the legislature to decide if they're right, if we're on the right target. Yeah.
So, page 51, section 9, that section 2 of this act shall take effect June 1, 2021. So what, and I understand that we come back and revisit in 2025, but what actually goes into effect in 2021?
The bill does, including that section. But that section,
but there's certain goals that kick in right away. I guess that's what
the whole bill, moving towards electric cars, planting trees, all the things we've discussed for the last over a week and a half, 4 hours, all go into effect then, including the 60%, which is driving this, the 60% reduction, the 2045 by net zero by 2045. The rest of the bill stays intact, but if when 2025 comes along, unless the legislature acts, we are not directed to continue on the path of reducing greenhouse gases by 60% by 2030 or net neutral by 2045.
Mr. Chairman,
Yep.
I think If you look at page 52, I think possibly that's where Senator Carozza was asking, because there are other sections that have other effective dates. Section 4, 6, and 7 are clarified in sections 10, 11, and 12, and 13. Yeah, but they have different expiration dates. 9 years and 1 month rather than 4 years and 1 month.
For purposes of clarification, on page 8 is the beginning of section 2. What page is the beginning of section 4?
That's the beginning of the trees section. So that is, it starts on bottom of page 39.
Bottom of page 39. Article agriculture?
Yep, so this is, all the tree provisions are subject to a 10-year
Okay.
expiration.
And then where is section 6 start?
Section 6 starts on page 47.
Environment?
Yes. So that, this, section 5 and section 6 are essentially the same thing.
Oh,
Or sorry, section 6 is essentially the same thing as section 5, but it has to do with contingency language that
So-
a termination. It's just it's double drafting
That's
because
fine.
there's something that
so section 6 is on page 47.
right
Section 7 starts,
on page 49,
Got
and
it.
that's the work group on trees.
let it be further enacted.
So going back to those dates, it
Thank you.
seems to me it would be helpful if we had, if the bill goes into effect on July 1, 2021, what's required then? On 2022, what's required? In other words,
Everything is effective June 1st, 2021.
but then certain goals kick in on certain years.
No, let's not confuse things. The 60% reduction in the 2045 net zero are the overarching umbrella. They're section 2. They go into effect to drive this whole engine of why we're doing this, and they are abrogated in 2025. The other sections, we've just gone through when they do the cars, when they do the trees. In each section, it talks about the phase-in. So the phase-in's already in the bill in each section. You can't put, I don't think you can put the phase-in again in the uncodified section. So I think it's important to understand the bill goes into effect June 1, 2021. All these programs start, some faster than others. And in 2025, unless the legislature acts, the 60% and the 2045 die. Now, at any point in time, the legislature can revisit any section of this and change any section at once.
I understand that, and that's a clear description. I think what I was looking for is if you were, you have a 52-page bill in front of you, and if you were looking at it from the standpoint of, 2021, the bill goes into effect, and then the implementation of those sections almost going down. So in 22, what's expected for trees and buildings and across the board, 23 almost, so you can kind of lay out what the challenges are. That's what I was looking at, kind of a master calendar to really see what we're biting off here.
Let us see if we have the resource to try to develop something like that. I don't want to promise it if we can't deliver. We'll look at trying to do something that makes it visually easier. Okay, that's the bill. We went through it, April went through it, then we went through it, a second time. Let me suggest this. If you have amendments, the bill can be cleaned up. Obviously, we'll consider amendments, and obviously some might offer amendments and still vote against it, but that's life in this fast lane. We will take it up Wednesday. I would encourage you to get any amendments to staff by noon on Tuesday. If you need to talk to committee to actually draft them, either they will do it or they will direct you to the amendment room. Is that fair, or should just have the amendment room do it?
I'd say actually come to me first. I might direct you to the amendment room, but the odds that I will be able to turn it around in time for a voting session are much higher than somebody in the amendment room trying to figure out a 50-page bill.
But that does mean you might need to call the office on Monday to get started on this. So, I mean, give it some thought. Some of you have already jotted down notes and have ideas where we can improve the bill or clarify the bill. So, try on Monday to call the office or email April, and then we'll try to have them for a packet that goes out Tuesday, and we might not have all of them, and we will be flexible in taking amendments on the fly. I don't want too many complicated amendments that aren't written in language. I mean, I already have some amendments to try to clean up the bill, which I'm going to work on this weekend. So that's the plan. Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A question kind of on the process with the amendments. Thank you for starting that discussion. I've had some meetings and some talks with a couple of agencies about, possibly streamlining some of this stuff. And, the similar bill last year, we worked out some amendments, and I actually voted for that bill last year in committee. But I just want to make sure that we're not doubling our efforts on certain things. I think it's worthwhile goals, but I just want to make sure it's as streamlined as possible and everything's kind of working together. So I guess with that, my question would be, as far as Wednesday, when the amendments are talked about, some of the amendments that I will be offering, it will be very helpful to have a couple of folks from a couple of departments to help me explain what's the process for requesting that. I know in the past they would just show up, but if I gave you a list of a couple names, I just make that request to your office, or how would I go about that?
Look, I don't want to have a second hearing. A lot of these agencies have offered suggestions and amendments in the letters of information. I don't want anybody on the committee to be necessarily a mouthpiece for the agencies. I mean, I can tell you there are one or two agencies that don't want to be told what to do, and the only reason this bill is in front of you is because they haven't been doing anything. So are they going to have amendments to streamline it or slow it down? Absolutely.
The streamline's my wording, but
Okay,
I'm just looking at getting everybody kind of working together.
Yeah, but
and
unfortunately,
can
Senator,
help.
they have not been. I have reached out to some of the agencies multiple times to say, how can we improve the bill? They have not responded to me. And they have said, we're doing this. Their plan that was due to you a year and a month ago has not been given to you. So I'm not sure I want to have every agency explaining amendments and taking our time. So I'm going to have to think through how many and how we're going to use them. If there's some confusion, would I call on them? Yes.
Okay.
I'm not going to shift our voting session
Right.
and markup because it's our bill to agencies or even the Bay Foundation or whoever.
Right.
It's complicated. And I think if there are questions of real confusion, I don't want to entertain questions to the building industry as to why they don't like something. That's not
Right,
what
that's
we're going to
not.
do.
I'm talking more about that would help us with the current programs that are already in effect and explaining what the different programs are, where the funding from the current programs go, and if we had somebody from MD, DNR, and MEA here to kind of help with our questions, like Senator Hester mentioned about, she was going to meet with them and try to find some answers. if they were right online during the voting session where if we had a question, we could ask them directly, I just think that would be helpful.
I will consider allowing limited questions to be asked of them to help clarification.
Thank you.
And Senator, I don't want to be cynical here, but at the last 2 Climate Commission meetings, we were told that they've already adopted using all-electric vehicles. But when we got down to it, nobody had done anything. So it's in our possession. We're going to have amendments. I don't want to slow it down with them philosophizing. If there is pure confusion, and I think one of them can answer it, I'll call on them. So that's the best I can tell you, or else we'll be here for 6 hours.
Mr. Chair.
I just, Senator, so that's where we are. Yes.
With all due respect, the sessions that Senator Gallion and I have already been participating in with the agencies and departments were being driven by Senator Gallion, with him seeking information on some of his ideas for amendments. I personally participated in those. It seems to me, though, we're not necessarily the experts of these programs, and it seems to me if we can have advocates on the screen as we are right now and have had other state agency heads like Jared when we've needed him in our voting sessions, that is more than a reasonable request, and it actually could possibly help us to get to some amendments that there may be some bipartisan consensus on. So I think it was a very reasonable request that our ranking member made, and I second that.
Senator, I will call on them as needed. I am not going to open up to say they can be part of the conversation and it's unlimited questions. Their position was letter of information. They've been asked for amendments, and I have not seen any. Even for the education bill, we had DLS here, and a few times we had to ask the teachers or the superintendents a question on a very complicated bill that we just discussed again today, and I don't see this as being any different. So I will consider it if I see there's confusion, and I will call on them as needed. But we're not going to have a second hearing. They've had opportunities to offer amendments to us. Other questions? I'll get back to Malcolm's.
No, that isn't what I'm doing.
Okay.
In response to Senator Carrozza and anyone else who's wondering about whether there's an analogous situation, I just wanted to remind folks that Jared DeMarinis and the State Board of Elections is nonpartisan, independent-minded, and that all the alphabet soup of the agencies, MDA and MDE and others, are within the administration, and as the chairman said, hasn't even given us their position. So I think it's not quite apples and apples.
Okay, the final piece of business, we just got a note that Senator Augustine would prefer to withdraw his bill. So we'd have to move to reconsider the vote by which we made it unfavorable. It's been moved and seconded.
Since I voted to make it unfavorable, I vote for the reconsideration.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to reconsider. Does anybody oppose taking no position and allowing him to withdraw the bill? Seeing none, done. Okay, thank you for your time, and we'll pick up next week, try to de-stress over the weekend.
I was trying to help with the temperature.
You wouldn't have this fucking vote, they did their job. Turn off your mic.